Hey, it's Becca.
And Rachel.
And we are starting the series that is a year in the making.
Woo!
So excited. Our video last week really was just like a chance to say, hey, this is happening and it needs to stop.
Yeah.
And this is a series that we have been planning to do and needed time to be able to figure out what we wanted it to look like. So this is time to go into depth of what some of the things that we mentioned last week.
Mm-hmm.
And other things that we haven't even touched on yet.
Yeah, so with everything that's happened in the last week, two pretty big things have happened. And one, we've gotten a lot of people who basically thought they were alone this entire time and then realized that they weren't. And so, which is really nice for us. I mean, on some level we knew because we have each other, but
right.
A lot of the TFC friendships that you make, they kind of fall apart because life happens. And so then you're carrying around all of this and you kind of think that you're just alone with it.
Yeah.
So when people saw our video, it was a lot of like, whoa, like
somebody else felt the same way.
Like, me too. That's awesome that someone, kind of finally said it. And the other thing was a lot of people didn't know that those people existed in the opposite way, thinking that it is just us. And we woke up one morning and chose violence, pretty much.
Which is so crazy.
That we just were like, you know what, I'm bored and I don't have anything to do today. Might as well get on the internet and like say some stuff because we can.
Which is crazy because like neither one of us want to deal with the backlash of this. But we feel that it's way too important not to say something.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
And it's something that we were taking on hesitantly and now we're taking on happily.
Yeah.
And so kind of to resonate with both groups of people, we decided that the best way to kind of send a message was to step outside of ourselves for a minute and kind of read some quotes that we've gotten, whether it was last year or in this last week, of people who saw this message and it resonated with them to the point where they reached out.
Yep.
And so for the next however many minutes this takes, this isn't us. This is not our experience. We are just a voice.
These are anonymous and we have permission to share all of these.
Yes. So take it away.
I'd start with the purity culture of it all. It came from everywhere in evangelism, but heavily in an organization for hormonal teenagers. I had no experience with dating before high school, but the pressure put on us to not mess up sexually really messed with my abilities to connect with people in relationships. Purity culture tells you that you are not the owner of your body and you are not in control of your body. Both are toxic and dangerous. First, if I'm not the owner of my body, how can I tell when my body is being mistreated? What autonomy do I have to use my natural intuition to tell me a relationship doesn't feel right? Because I wasn't given the tools to listen to my body, rather I was warned not to listen to my body. I allowed myself to be treated very poorly in relationships with tons of red flags. Secondly, we were told that we could not control our bodies even if we wanted to. We had to shut our sexuality down at the source so we wouldn't lose control altogether. However, once I had gotten distance from evangelism, I was able to develop my own sexual ethic. I am more than capable of controlling my desires if they are not helpful or edifying for those involved. But I only learned that after giving myself permission to take any steps in intimacy, physically or emotionally. For me, purity culture shut me down. It kept me from learning how to safely connect with others. I had to educate myself by reading books on my own at the full-grown age of 23 before I became securely active for the first time. Because purity culture only teaches you not how to in a healthy way.
Preach. That's it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's pick one from mine. Mine's shorter. I also remember feeling on multiple occasions that I wasn't spiritual enough to be one of the favorites in the group that the adults all fawned over. Considering that during the week I'd have to bend over backwards to feel good enough at home, to have it also happen in the place where I'd hoped to feel safe hurt a lot. I was in all 4 years in high school, and honestly I don't remember a moment where I didn't feel like a burden to the adults in the group.
During the talks, it would always be based off of how females will most likely put us in different difficult spots. But since we're the men of the relationship, we were the ones who were supposed to say no to anything more than how to be regular PG relationship stuff you see in middle school. How we had to set the guidelines and how we should never be alone with females, and especially if we were dating someone. How females shouldn't dress skimpy, but if they were, we should be men and not be tempted by them and look the other way. It was the same bullshit every year. After I left, they still continued to the trends with the cards. We'll get into that. The men also talked about porn too, obviously. Every time we'd have these talks, they'd be asked how we're not doing great, and then us sunshiners would talk about how that was total BS. TFCs didn't enjoy talking about it because it was difficult concept, and difficult concepts were always swept under the rug. The Sunshine guys always talked about how we messed up multiple times that week and how we'd always get better, not looking at it. It always came back to how porn is bad because these women don't have a choice but to show their bodies and make money, and how men need to stop looking at porn because those women choose to work in the industry.
There was also a time, my junior senior year, where I spent most of the TFC day with the adult I trusted most. I was pulled into a separate room by a few TFC adults that had been told that I had self-harmed. After I explained that there was a lot going on at home, they threatened to turn my parents in. None of them offered help.
TFCs has been an extremely impactful ministry in my life. It has formed me into who I am in many ways, and has developed my faith and some lasting friendships, and even prepared me for my future career. However, in reflecting on my experience in TFCs, I find issues in some of the harsh ways staff communicated with students when issues arose and toxic purity culture instigated between the men and during the man talks that I personally believe were overemphasized, shame, and contributed to the often overly sexualized male culture in the students.
And during that weird service, where the leader asked us to send in our relationship questions for him, I asked a question along the lines of, what if you don't want to date a boy and you're a girl? And even though he doesn't know I asked that, his answer was along the lines, you better get to praying because that's a sin.
TFCs was judgmental, uneducated, misleading, and honestly cruel towards anyone that felt differently than what they taught, which wasn't love and isn't from the higher power I know and have a personal relationship with.
Looking back, however, I now realize how much harm a group like that could have on impressionable young people. First of all, the level of emotional manipulation was insane. Between altar calls, testimony sharing, and the guilt and shame they made you feel if you weren't godly enough. You were never allowed to process your emotions in a healthy manner. You were supposed to just express them without any sort of way to work through them, and if you weren't crying at the altar, you'd feel less holy and less connected to God, and therefore inferior.
This one's rough. I'd say one of my worst experiences with TFCs had to be my freshman year. My grandma had been battling cancer, and I had taken a lot more responsibility at home. TFC camp offered an escape from the hell I was dealing with at home. I remember begging my grandma to let me have one more time and say goodbye, have more time to say goodbye and spend more time in that environment. She was extremely tired and just wanted to go home. I remember complaining a little bit. Fast forward a few months, I got caught responding to a text to another TFCer, a text I sent at the beginning of the TFC day. Despite that being the only time I touched my phone, I was pulled hours later into the hallway by leaders and called a liar when I said I didn't remember texting anyone. They had seen my response on the other person's phone. They didn't stop there. After jogging my memory about the text, I was then lectured about how I had been absolutely horrible to my grandma months earlier, and I was a disappointment because of it. There was also the time, my senior year, when I spent most of my TFC day with one adult I trusted. Oh, this is a continuation of the same person.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
You're fine. It's all important. I just want to say I appreciate your video regarding TFCs. I was in it for 3 years, finally decided my senior year it wasn't worth my time. Some people there were really great, but I couldn't stand how everyone acted like they were perfect and you couldn't talk about anything without feeling ashamed.
I was in all 4 years of high school and honestly don't remember a moment where I didn't feel like a burden to the adults in the group. Oh, jeez. I'm just reading like a quote. I have other quotes on a Word document. That's why. So I don't have any names on these, so I don't know who wrote what, but
That's okay.
different quote. Our discussions on the men's side always started off with a type of game where, because, we're men and we had to let our competitiveness out so that we could sit down and listen better. This typically was like dodgeball, football, or gaga ball, or whatever the church had to offer that we were at that weekend. It always started this way and ended this way. During TFC camp, we'd have our daily we'd have our daily groups, and at the end of the week, we'd go on a hike and do this big event where all the adult mentors would pray over us, and it'd be very emotional because we definitely weren't peer pressured into thinking it was a huge life-changing event, which we were taking place in right then. This happened every single year, and each year the men couldn't think of something new, so they continued this trend. During sunshine, though, all the men would go on a weekend away camping at a special spot where the women weren't allowed to go until after I was out. It was very sexist. We'd literally go swimming and camping and go fishing for the whole weekend. It was a blast, but it was just an excuse to go and do something and bond as men of the group. I always felt bad due to half of our group not being able to partake in this awesome experience. Following that, we typically read the same Bible verse like Genesis 1:26-27 and Ephesians 6:11, where it talks about the armor of God and the creation of men. We had these Man of God cards that we were expected to carry with us everywhere after TFC camp and during TFC camp. My freshman year, if the Sunshiners deemed we weren't following the card correctly, they could call us out and they were allowed to take them away from us. I had multiple Sunshiners threaten to take my card away during camp.
I'm going to do 2 because that was long.
Yep, go ahead.
I chose to study theater in college, and the adults cornered me into a conversation to tell me that I needed to choose Jesus and not enter a life of sin, and that theater is the root of the devil, and I need to choose to enter ministry to further my already rocky relationship. When I couldn't come to 2 Sunshine concerts, I got kicked out, and the leader told my small group it was because I didn't care enough about them, and if I did, I would be there. Well, I'm not done. I was poor and got to even join TFCs because of a scholarship. But because of the scholarship, I had to put in extra efforts and pull more weight than the other campers.
I think that it was a place that you could build an amazing community if that was what you desired, but it also created a place to put on a face. I think we were expected to be perfect all of the time, and that was in some ways an aspect of toxic Christianity that I could see. There were specific leaders that were toxic, judgmental, and pushy with their personal views. It was definitely a place that you had to make yourself comfortable depending on who you spent your time with. But it wasn't a completely safe environment that was open to all people under all circumstances. And as a Christian who is called to live that way, it seems awfully hypocritical. I would say that I still enjoyed my time in TFCs, but I learned what to look out for and what to avoid in Christian community, for sure.
I'm out.
You're out? Okay.
Yep.
I was never officially a member of TFCs, but I did travel with them and volunteered my time to assist them and participated in several activities with them. I just got into TFCs because I was depressed and vulnerable at the time and was looking for a place to feel like I belonged, and they offered that to me. Looking back, I realized plenty of evangelizing by these types of organizations and religious people are predatory, and their prey are the vulnerable people like me. I had never been religious before this, but I dove in head first because I felt loved and accepted. That is true. I did feel it, and I felt genuine at the time. But I was also this closeted gay kid who felt attracted to members of the group, and that was also part of my motivation. Looking back, however, I now realize how much harm a group like that could have on an impressionable young people. First of all, the level of emotional manipulation was insane. Between altar calls, testimony sharing, and the guilt and shame.
Of mine.
Is it?
Yeah. That's where I started.
Oh, okay.
Which I feel kind of goes to show that, like, these are things that we either resonated with. Like, so many people resonate with us. These are things that we resonate with.
Yeah.
These are things that we were like, oh, you know, that applies to us as well. We also picked our quotes separately.
We did. We did.
So,
I have more. The biggest thing for me, though, was the baton, which the Sunshine Guys passed around after each year. This was only for men and the Sunshine Guys, and if you weren't deemed the leader of the group for the next year, you wouldn't even be allowed to look at it or even hold it. I believe it was eventually passed around to a girl, but I'm not certain about that. It was. I remember that. And it was a big deal. It was like a bad thing that it was passed to a girl. It was totally sexist, and the men took great pride in this baton each year. If you were given it, I remember most of the men that had it held it over their peers, as he was the alpha dog and what he said goes. It was actually pretty disgusting. One of the leaders of the group, I cannot overstate how much damage the God complex they gave some of these young people. A teen leader and not an adult leader told me one day that the reason there is war in the Middle East is because God wanted us to completely annihilate them and kill everyone in the Middle East. And because we wouldn't listen to God, the war rages on. I went with it because I had no other thoughts or ideas on the subject until later in life. And looking back, I feel so disgusted at how someone at the age of 17, 18 could be taught to believe such a thing. And then they go on to become adult leaders, shaping the new teens in this homogenized way of thinking, acting, and behaving. And it's all they've ever known because they weren't allowed to be part of the secular world. Not to mention how everything had to be separated by gender, how they lifted up terrible people who wanted to commit genocide and believed queers should be killed, and believed in inferiority of women into leadership roles because that's the godly way of thinking. Yep, I have more. Hold on. Thank you for sharing your experience. I definitely resonate with some of the aspects of it, particularly the emotionally manipulative nature of the worship sessions and blatant favoritism and inappropriate sharing on behalf of the mentors. I remember feeling wildly uncomfortable every time I attended any TFC function, though at the time I chalked it up to just not being in the in crowd within TFCs, or that somehow my deficiency in my own spiritual journey was the reason for my discomfort. I know.
I just want to hug everybody.
I know. Did you read this one?
No.
Okay. Hey guys, I had to reach out because I just watched your video on the impact of TFCs, and y'all, I applaud you. I have blocked that part out of my life for so many years, and listening to what you guys had to say, I found myself clapping and agreeing with every single word. It's a fucked up organization that is swept under the rug. I realized that you had reached out to me about a year ago about this, and I don't remember ever seeing it. I'm so sorry about that. So going forward, if you guys ever need some more perspective, I'd be more than willing to give you my personal input. I'm going to stop there because the rest is just about how great we are, and we don't need to talk about that.
We don't need to talk about that. So, those are the quotes from the people that have watched our video and decided to reach out to us. There are more. There's a lot more, actually, but a lot of those we want to turn into videos, kind of just like this one, where we have stories to share and stories to tell, and having people be seen and heard that felt like they couldn't do it on their own, or whatever that ends up looking like. But I do want to take a minute and say thank you to everyone that did reach out. Thank you to everyone that did watch the other video. Thank you for watching this video. It means a lot to us. We didn't know when we sat down a week ago in front of the camera that all of this was going to happen, but I feel so thankful. I'm so thankful that this happened. The goal was to not feel alone, and it kind of seems like that's what we've done. So mission 100% accomplished. Anything else that happens was meant to happen, and that's just how that's gonna go.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I mean, again, just like thank you, and thank you for the messages of people just saying, hey, I appreciate you guys sharing. Like, everything you said, I felt, and like I am thankful that someone's willing to say it out loud.
Yeah, I think it's just a very big come together moment that has honestly been a decade in the making. And now it's here. And I think it's so awesome.
Yeah. So I think, you know, if you can take anything from this video, just know that, like, if you are feeling this, like, you are not the only person. We just gave you a million examples of that.
And a million more to come.
Yeah. And there's more, like,
we're not done.
Yeah, we're not done. And so we are going to put out more videos this week.
So look out for those.
Yeah. And
so I'm super excited, and I know that you're super excited.
Yeah.
And again, the big
Are you throwing things now?
Sorry. The biggest message here for you to know from us is that we're not done, and for you to know for yourself that you're not done either. So, we will see you guys next time.